Hello and welcome to Game Changer. I'm Mariam Zia. As the government is preparing to unveil the budget of 25-26, of course we know that all eyes on government's plan to steer the country towards sustainable growth. When we look at the statements coming from Finance Minister Muhammad Aurangzeb, of course he promised that bold measures would be taken as far as reshaping Pakistan's economic landscape is concerned. The public sector development program has been set at a record rupees 1 trillion with key infrastructure like Diamer Basha Dam taking center stage. The government's growth target stands at 4.2%, supported by 4.4% increase in agriculture and 3.5% rise in large-scale manufacturing. When we look at the inflation, that is projected at 7.5%, while exports are targeted at $35 billion and remittances are expected to exceed $39 billion. The government is aiming high with the vision to, of course, turn Pakistan's economy to $1 trillion by year 2035. But is this possible with the difficulties and challenges that lie ahead? In today's program, we will be, of course, delving into the challenges that the country is facing at this point in time and what this upcoming budget means for the country that the government is going to be announcing on June 10, 2025, and what this budget means for development growth and Pakistan's future. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Mr. Humayun Iqbal Shami, who is economist. Welcome to the program. We are also joined by Mr. Fahim Sardar, who is economist. Welcome to the program. And we are joined online by Ms. Komal Kent, who is an economist. Welcome to the program. Mr. Humayun, let me start with you. Of course, when we look at the upcoming budget, Finance Minister Muhammad Aurangzeb has emphasized that the government would be taking bold measures to provide a strategic direction for Pakistan's economic landscape. How do you interpret this statement, first of all?
Obviously, I think the statement is good. It will definitely encourage us to do more, but the fact is this, that I must say, give some background of that. This is going to be the second budget of this present government, and when the first budget was being presented, I think the situation was not as good as we have now. Economic situation was very bleak, but now at least we are out of those panics and we are not but I cannot say we are still in the comfortable zone. So I think this budget, and then looking at the recent scenario of the war between Pakistan and India, so definitely some of our priorities will be shifted, and then we have so almost more than 1.2 trillion rupees shortfall in the taxes. So definitely these all things are not very encouraging, that we can give some sort of a revolutionary budget this time. So we have certain constraints here. So I think, and the coming week, the coming budget also, I think we are not in position to increase more taxes, because already taxes are more, and taxes I have been...
Right, we will be of course focusing on different challenges that the public at this point in time is facing, especially when we talk about the taxes on the salaried class. Let me bring in Mr. Fahim into the discussion. Mr. Fahim, the federal budget is scheduled to be announced on June 10, 2025, with Pakistan Economic Survey 24-25 to be released a day earlier on June 9th. What key indicators should we be looking forward to see in the economic survey that will set the stage for the budget?
Thank you for having me. Firstly, when you look at the economic survey of Pakistan, the first thing that everybody is going to be looking at is the growth rate that has been achieved and what is possibly expected, because what is expected will be covered by the budget. The second thing that everyone will look at is the growth rates within the growth rate: agriculture, manufacturing and services. And we've seen that services has been growing at a very rapid pace, but we have also seen that large scale manufacturing has been slowing down somewhat. The third thing, which is going to be critical, is how the government is going to generate more revenue. This is the key point for Pakistan. We're standing at a critical juncture where Pakistan has to accept the concept of generating value, generating wealth. Thereby you can have all these expenses. When we come to expenses, which are now covered in the budget, and they will be covered in another angle in the economic survey, we have to look at the largest expense of the budget. That is going to be debt, interest, and the principal repayment of debt. Second is the military expenditure. Third is going to be PSDP. PSDP is now, as you mentioned, close to, I think, 1 trillion. When we look at the budget and when we look at the economic survey of Pakistan, we have to see two things. If we can gather by reading between the lines, how will revenues be increased and how will costs be contained? I have mentioned the three biggest costs for the government of Pakistan. So the government has to come up with a new way to reduce the debt, the burden. Thankfully, the interest rate is lower, so that is helpful. The military expenditure, that should remain as it is, or it should be increased a little bit because we need it right now. But the PSDP, I think, is going to be another very critical point. Why? Because PSDP is an investment. And I've said this on multiple forums that if, let's say, not 1 trillion, 500 billion is invested, we need to earn that every single year.
Right, right. We will be, of course, discussing in detail about PSDP as well. But let again Ms. Komal into the discussion. Komal, when we look at this projected budget, the government has set a GDP growth rate of 4.2% for fiscal year 25-26. Considering the current economic climate, is this target realistic in your opinion?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Like every time, I think currently we're around 2.8, 2.7, 3%. Different estimates exist. So it is not very ambitious a target. However, there are certain things that I would like to highlight. We've already talked about it briefly, but about the fiscal space that is there. So about 50% of our projected budget is going to be interest payments and debt servicing. And then we are anticipating an increase in the defense revenue as well. So there is very limited space. And of course, we have reduced the size of the PSDP as well. So we have very limited space to work with in terms of reforms that are necessary to spur this growth. For capital formation, for any kind of investment, capital investment, for example, the areas in trade and transport are definitely very important. On the development side of things, exploring out-of-the-box solutions are very important, provided that we are able to achieve the required reforms, even if the fiscal space does not allow it, but if we are exploring innovative solutions, for example, public-private partnerships or impact financing, then there is hope, definitely, that there is a possibility that we can achieve the targets. But for that, there has to be, like I said, a little bit of a thinking out of the box kind of approach, innovation, and a lot of cooperation amongst disparate stakeholders. So not only would the government need to step up in terms of providing the policy leadership role, but also private sector players would have to step up, our civil society, our international development partners. So provided that we create that kind of space for reforms, then we do stand a chance. But if we do not do that, then in the budget, there is very little room for or room for investment into the capital investment that we do require to achieve this kind of growth target.
Talking about reforms, Komal, when we look at the statement coming from Mr. Ehsan Iqbal, he has highlighted the need to increase, of course, tax to GDP ratio from 10% to 16 to 18% to fund development initiatives. What kind of structural reforms are needed, in your opinion, to achieve this ambitious goal?
So, broadly speaking, of course, when we talk about fiscal consolidation, we do talk about revenue mobilization, increasing the tax net, broadening the tax base, tax net. But we also, like last year, we were discussing this concept and within the discourse, talking about how to spend more effectively. And I'm not talking about austerity particularly, but about better resource mobilization. So broadly speaking, I think these two thematic areas need to be looked at. This would include also better public financial management. So making use of existing resources in a more efficient way, in a more strategic way. So anything that we spend in terms of even providing subsidies or any kind of support, let's say to the agriculture sector, or any kind of support the government is providing, has to be done in a targeted manner. So it cannot be sweeping policies, but more targeted and with the right kind of projections. And here I would like to point out the need for engaging technical experts and focusing on the HR part of designing policy and reform. So yeah, that's my take in a nutshell.
Important aspect, and I'll be coming back to you to discuss more about that. But Mr. Shami, when we look at the proposed development budget, like we earlier discussed, it stands at 1 trillion rupees, including 270 billion in foreign aid. How does this allocation compares to the previous years, and what does it signifies the government's priorities at this point in time?
Thing is this, that obviously, you know, if you look at, apparently it looks that more developmental budget mean that we will have more development, but looking at the scenario and the efficiency what we have in the government machinery, I think allocating more developmental budget is not a wise thing. Rather they should go for the public private partnerships, you know, so that will be more efficient. So I think this will be good. I mean, I don't think that the decreasing for about 100 billion rupees in the developmental budget is a very denting thing for the economy. I don't think. Rather, I will stress that this should be decreased more. Rather, so I think that is no issue. That because we can convert it to the public private partnership, and then the private sector should come up for the developmental thing, and the government can collaborate with that, and that will be more efficient. That will be more efficient in the financial, there will be more financial management in it, and I think and that will be more progressive, and they will ensure to complete the progress, because we have studied here, you know, that if 100 rupees are spent in the developmental budget here in Pakistan, you know, hardly the benefit goes for about 20 rupees. So 80 rupees, you know, just, you know, they are somewhere here or there, you know. So that is not a, I don't think that spending more on developmental budget mean that we can achieve more developmental target. That is no issue. Basic issues now with the budget is, you know, our financial constraint and our, you know, the budget deficit. I think this year, you know, despite this fact that we did not achieve our target in the tax collection, but despite this, we in non-tax revenue we achieved more than the target, and then there was a budget, you know, deficit was decreased because the debt reservicing payment was reduced. So I think this is why I think IMF did not object it, and they released the last grant also, you know. So coming budget also, I have a very, you know, this proposal I gave when the last budget was presented here in the PTV, that the government has to reduce its expenses. There are a lot of expenses, a lot of big expenses which the federal government is burdening itself, and which are not in the domain of the federal government. Like I am saying,
of course, austerity measures are needed.
That is, along with that, there are certain projects, certain areas where federal government is unnecessarily poking its nose. Like I am, one thing is the Benazir income program, which is exclusively after the 18th amendment. It's a social development program, is not within the purview of the federal government. So last year we spent 600 billion rupees here. Now I think they are allocating about more than 700. So I think this should be transferred to the provinces. That the provinces, because the 99% of the recipients from the Benazir program belong to the provinces. So, and this does not come in the purview of the federal government, but federal government unnecessarily.
Right. Let me bring in Mr. Fahim into the discussion. Mr. Fahim, first your take on this, and also when we look at the government's plans to borrow rupees 270 billion externally to fund PSDP, how sustainable is this borrowing strategy in the long term?
We need to revisit our borrowing strategy. We need to revisit the debt structure of Pakistan, and we need to inculcate in our mind, in our soul, that give ourselves a limit of, let's say, 25% of GDP we can only borrow. Right now we're close to 83-84%. Now any kind of debt has to be paid back. Debt is fine as long as you use it as what it's intended for, which is leverage to generate more revenue. So once you're generating additional revenue, then that debt is not a problem. In Pakistan, what's happened is, and I'll just circle back to what I said earlier, we have to generate value, we have to generate wealth. And for the government, that should not be a problem, because slowly the government has started to, slowly but surely, the government has started to look in this direction. That, for example, what is the first thing that Pakistan needs to do? You asked about debt, and I'm going to give a solution to it. We have to focus on exports. Exportable, as I've worked extensively on this with the government, we can do very simple things which can help our exports. It's a long story, but that's just one thing that we need to push up. We need to set a target of an export quantum of $75 billion. Anything that is if we have a trade deficit, we're going to have to borrow money.
Right.
We're going to have to raise taxes. So we have to, for example, come up with a new philosophy of import plus X. That should be our export target. If we are importing $55 billion worth of items, we have to export $56 billion worth of. Suddenly the deficits just vanish.
Right, and of course when we look at the statement made by Mr. S.N. Iqbal, he also emphasized project rationalization to save resources. In your opinion, what kind of criteria should be followed for that?
Look, I'm originally from corporate, but I've had the privilege of working with the government, so I'll give a corporate answer to this. And the government has always benefited from corporate solutions, or I should say most of the times it's benefited from corporate solutions. Any rupee, 1 rupee invested in any direction, in any project across Pakistan, whether it's federal or provincial, that rupee has to generate more than a rupee. It's as simple as that. It should generate, let's say, a rupee and 5 paisas. If that's what's happening, then we are in a profit. Every rupee that's going to be invested, it's going to generate more funds. And coming back to what Shami Saab said, if you allow me, if we prioritize the quality projects over the non-quality projects, we have to be realistic. That's suddenly where you start saving money, and not only do you save money, you start making money. That's where you should start seeing value being produced throughout the country, which was, lo and behold, the original plan of PSDP, to create value centers across the country. It's not supposed to be just a handout. It's supposed to create value. It's supposed to nurture value creation throughout the country. What that does is it reduces the burden on the federal and provincial governments, which later have to, in the present circumstance, they have to fill in gaps.
Right.
So if you, coming back to, I'll re-answer your question, when projects are rationalized, what you do is you end up saving money, and you end up diverting your money towards more logical, viable, robust projects, which will end up making more money. So if we spend 1 rupee on a project, we should, for example, make 1 rupee 5 paisas in 1 year. If that's not happening, this has to be re-evaluated.
Right, that has to be re-evaluated. And Komal, when we look at decisions made at APCC, it has decided to put a complete ban on approval of development schemes by DDWPS until the conclusion of IMF program. How will this affect the ongoing and future development initiatives, in your opinion?
Very good question, and something that economists have been talking about the budgets in terms of throw forwards. This has been an old discussion. So this has been going around. I think it was Hafiz Pasha or one of those, our veteran economists who had given an exact number also about 10 to 12 years that the throw forward that we have in our budget right now for the federal budget, and then even in PSDP, it is so big, So throw forward is this concept I'm sure people in the industry they are familiar with, but for a layman, let me explain that. So throw forward is that you've already committed certain projects and the funding for it in your budgets, and therefore there is no space for new projects to be added. So I cannot recall the exact number, but if it is 10 to 12 years or 7 to 8 years of no projects being planned, but then this condition based on whether the IMF program is successful or not is actually irrelevant, because as it is, without any external circumstances or any other conditions involved, the budget is already for so many years kind of inflexible. We cannot have new projects anymore. So therefore, like Shami Saab also said, public-private partnerships are the way forward. Looking into innovative finance, impact financing, social impact bonds, blended finance, these kind of options we have to start looking for, even for budgetary support. So for me, these two things are unconnected. As it is, our budgets do not allow any space for more development projects to be added to them.
I also want your take on sector-wise growth and development. The government has set a 4.5% growth target for agriculture, 4.3% for industry, and 4.0 for services in fiscal year 25-26. What are the key drivers expected to achieve these targets?
I'll again use the banal word reforms and support from the government, whether we're looking at the export competitiveness side or if we're looking at agriculture. There has been a lot of contention about the upcoming agricultural tax. I think that is a step in the right direction. Agriculture is, for example, 19% of GDP and less than 0.1% of tax revenue. So that sector definitely needs to be taxed. That sector definitely needs to be pushed out of the nascent or the infant stage. Our textile industry has been claiming nascent industry status for so long, which is unfair on other sectors. So having said that, to be able to achieve those targets and to be able to have policy measures such as imposing taxes to actually work, you have to also look at the revenue or the productivity side of it, which need the right kind of support and reforms from the government. For example, we are looking at Punjab government and the progress they have made in agriculture in terms of providing technical support through water management and on small farm holdings. We are also looking at the policy direction in terms of the financing or the SME or the small farmer loans or credit financing facilities that banks are offering. So this kind of support from the government as well as the private sector as well as other players in the economy, that has to come. And it has to be about technical capacity building as well as financing as well as policy support. So there has to be a whole ecosystem support for any target that we have set sectorally as well to be met. So that's it in a nutshell.
The water sector, that is a priority at this point in time, keeping in the context the conflict between Pakistan and India. But it has been allocated rupees $140 billion, 140 billion rupees. And this is a reduction, like 45% reduction from previous rates. How will this funding cut impact water-related issues and water security?
You have talked about that the recent conflict and the Indian attempt to stop water, but I think the water resources, to create more water resources, this has been a challenge, and this has been a, this should have been done even without the war between the India and Pakistan, because that is the need of the day. Because the thing is that we have only storage for 30 days available in this country, which should be about 300 days at least, and then 80% of our water, in more than 80% of our water comes only in three months, you know. So rest of the year, you know, this is just dry. Like particularly in the down areas like Sindh, you know, they don't have water in the winter season or in the early, you know, other than the monsoon season, but only that can be available if there will be resource. There will be reservoir are here, you know, but they, I mean, unfortunately those part of the area are not you know, criticizing for creation of the more dams, you know, in the country, but government should emphasize it, and it should be rather, which I have earlier said, that it can be done with the private sector. And then the other thing is that the provinces are getting much more money these days. They are, I mean, under the NFC award, you know, they are getting about 57, more than 57% of the, you know, tax revenue goes directly to the provinces. So the provinces should be empowered, and provinces should be emphasized to create more and more, to invest more and more in the water sector, because federal government, I don't think under these constrained circumstances, and when they have unnecessarily taken up the liabilities of those areas which are not in its domain, like BISP and the water. I mean, if I have been saying much before that we could save 600 billion rupees in the last budget from the, if had we transferred it to the BISP, to the provinces, and the distribution agencies, the electric
Right.
distribution agencies, which are eating about 1400 billion rupees every year. So 2 trillion rupees government could save just by a stroke of pen. So 2 trillion rupees they can
Right.
sport, so that can be used for the other thing, you know, on the
Right, Mr. Fahim, of course, that remains an important aspect. First, your take on water security and this 45% reduction. And also, like we earlier discussed, that human resource development remains an important aspect. But when we look at the projected budget, the allocations for education and higher education have been cut by 27% and 32% respectively. How will these cuts affect that human resource development that we are talking about?
I think we need to be clear that this is a cut in the federal HEC budget, not the provincial. The provinces, it's a provincial subject. They have to generate their own revenues. That's why we've got a lot of universities facing some kind of a bit of a, let's just say, challenge at the moment, because they have to adjust their revenue streams. When we talk about water, when we talk about water security, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that Pakistan has openly, unequivocally told India that water will lead to war. And we have demonstrated
That remains the red line.
that's one of the last red lines. They've crossed, India has crossed many red lines, and we have been, I think, a little too tolerant. And this is one thing where, you know, I'm half Kashmiri, I know what's happening in Kashmir right now. So the point is, we need to look at water from a different perspective. Another thing, rains are changing. Rains are shifting slightly towards the northwest. So suddenly you've started seeing, and the data will prove this, that you have more rain in places like KP and Balochistan. This is June right now, and if we go outside, if we look at the temperature, doesn't look like June. It looks
So
like
climate change is another aspect.
Climate change is an aspect, and rains are changing. So we have to adjust our policy. But I will say something that I've said on many forums, and it's going to sound slightly funny. When we deal with climate change, the first thing that we need to do is analyze what the effect of climate change is. Either it's drought, that's a separate issue, but there's something that's devastated Pakistan, it's flooding. And when there's too much water, what does water do? It flows. So Pakistan needs to come up with I know it sounds very simple, but it's essential that we do it. We need to get out of the way of the water, because there's too much in the way of the water, and the waterways are shifting because of the rains, because of many other things. And I do believe that the water crisis with India, inshallah, will not go that far, but we have to do our job. We have to get out of the way of water because of the rains.
And that of course remains an important aspect, but of course that is a whole new debate for another program. Let me bring in Komal. Komal, the social sector's budget has been reduced by 25% to rupees 150 billion. What impact will it have on the social welfare programs? And also let's talk about the bold measures and strategic direction that is needed at this point in time. Okay, let me of course take the same question to you, Mr. Shami. The social sector's budget has been reduced by 25% to rupees 150 billion. How will this impact the social welfare program and of course the poverty alleviation programs?
This I have
Because you already discussed
I
about
have
it.
already discussed it. Under the 18th Amendment, you know, social sector is not a area under the domain of the federal
So you
government.
think this is a good decision?
It is good. It is a good decision.
reduce-
It is
yeah.
a good decision. I don't think it should harm to the, because now the social sector, the federal government domain is only restricted up to the ICT, Islamabad Capital Territory. So I think it's not a big area that we 150 billion. I think a huge money. So, but obviously, you know, government, federal government will cater for the provinces, this in different hand, which unnecessarily. This is what I am saying, that unnecessarily federal government is poking its nose into those areas where it doesn't have the domain. So I mean, this is obviously, you know, hitting our budget. It is creating more hassle for the, when we are needing each and every money, we are taxing more. We want to collect more. Already we are short of taxes, and we might be increasing more taxes, which I say it will be counterproductive. I'm of those person who is always in the support that the tax rate should be reduced.
Of course, and government is indeed planning to do that. And let's talk about those strategic and bold measures that Mr. Aurangzeb promises in the upcoming budget, and the government is introducing differential tax and transaction rates for cash and digital payments across various sectors, including fuel pricing. How effective will this war on cash strategy be in promoting digital transactions, in your opinion?
It's indirect taxation. Let's
Yeah.
be clear.
Yes.
Let's be very clear. That on one hand, you'll get more tax. People will shift to the digital stream. That's fine. But on the other hand, if that is the objective, to have more direct tax or a larger proportion of direct tax as part of the whole tax regime, then you sort of defeat yourself. What's happening right now is Pakistan is going through a transition, and these are, I dare say, experiments, and we're testing to see how they work. If they work, that's fine.
But at the same time, we know that parallel economy is running in the country. So don't you think this is a good measure?
Of course, it is something that's going to help Pakistan. There's no doubt about that. But I'm
To
trying
formalize our
Yeah,
economy.
documentize.
because
Yes.
because what's going to happen is we're going to create an alternative structure
True.
which will grow with time. It'll become strong. For example, there will be less taxation on digital transactions.
Yes.
That's absolutely fine. Then one day we will have to come up with a policy to bring that stream into the mainstream. That's where the problem will sort of, you know, blow up. We're going to have a problem there. Right now, the FBR, and let's be fair, is under extreme pressure to generate more tax revenue. That's why in the initial part of our discussion, I said we need to focus on our expenses. We need to talk about our debt, especially domestic debt. We need to talk about our military expenditure, and we can see that the military expenditure has gone in the right direction towards mechanization, towards algorithmic warfare, towards computerization. And the third thing is PSDP. PSDP may as well be 2 trillion, but we have to generate more than whatever we invest. That is the key principle. You cannot throw money down the drain and then expect something to come out of it. If there's a P5 concept, we always talk about P1, let's talk about the P5 principle, where when a project is assessed, let's assess our projects and see where we stand. And in my last point, which is this, in my assessment, the solution to Pakistan's economic issues is to generate wealth, and that starts with increasing exports.
Right, and since you mentioned about exports earlier as well, Minister Aurangzeb has also highlighted the need for export-led growth to drive economic expansion.
Sure.
What measures should be taken to enhance, of course, export competitiveness?
reduce the problems in the sectors. I did it myself, and I've seen it with my own eyes. Every sector, the 20,
Red tapeism and
there's so many small micro problems. If you just start to kill them, you start to remove them, you start to erase them, suddenly the economy naturally starts to export itself. We keep jumping to a different time zone and different timescape where we're like, no, we want to export like this. No, just let it happen naturally. I did this myself. 20 top sectors of Pakistan had 242 impediments, visible impediments, and all we started doing was removing them very slowly, very carefully, without causing any damage. And suddenly exports started to increase in the 2020 to 2022 period. Exports, if you recall, they jumped. This was the main reason.
Right. Of course, this is a huge discussion, and we are looking forward to the upcoming budget as well, and we will be bringing more analysis. But we have to unfortunately conclude the program at this point. Thank you very much, Mr. Fahim Sardar, for joining us in today's discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Humayun Iqbal Shami, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Ms. Komal Kenneth Shakil, for joining us in today's discussion and for your valuable input. That's all from Game Changer. Take care. Allah Hafiz.